This tank is a T-92. This is an American Tier 8 light tank. And the map is Epic Normandy in the Frontline game mode. I am going to get around 10,000 damage in this game, mostly from light tank gameplay. Or, well, perhaps there might be some other tanks. We'll see how it works out. But there's going to be a lot of light tank gameplay. This was from a few days ago. I really didn't have a perfect strategy at the time as I do now. Now my strategy is to defend the cap, and defending the cap means that I actually sit right next to the cap so that I'm always able to take shots at anybody on the cap, anybody sniping at the cap. I can spot the cap. I have a lot of cap control if I'm near the cap. This particular game, I was more trying a sniping role, finding an elevated location or a place that has lots of bushes or somewhere where I had a nice view of the cap.
Zone B under attack.
And what works for one strategy on one day might not work in a different game because the enemy's always using different strategies. The enemy is very clever. Now, that is a nice little position that I found because it's hull down for me. Very difficult for the enemy to hit me. I don't know why I'm being spotted. I'm behind some cover and I have a camo net and I have 5 skills on this crew, you know. It should be hidden pretty well. Now, it's a light tank, so you don't get a lot of damage per shot. I'm only doing 150 damage per shot. But I am going to get that counter up to the 10,000 mark.
Zone B has been lost. The enemy got extra time.
So you can see that the enemy has already capped Zone B. Not the fastest capping that I've seen, but it is rather quick. Had one game where it took about 30 seconds and the enemy capped Zone A, B, and C. If you want to see that game, look for it in a future video. Now, obviously, I'm not going to be able to penetrate the armor on that, so I'm switching to the APCR rounds. Even if I can penetrate, let's say 30% of the time, I'm still going to try. It's better to try and penetrate him from a distance than to risk getting close to him. Could always go resupply. Now, obviously, if nobody does anything, he will win that cap, and we don't want him to do that. He only needs one more hit. The one good thing about my tank is that I'm relatively fast, so I can move across the battlefield very quickly. One thing that you're going to realize when you play the game is that the attacking team is rarely going to have their guns trained on the cap. So if you don't know where to go or where it's safe, driving into the cap area, for example, on Cap A, might actually be a safe place to be. Difficult to snipe onto. Oh, that was the one where I made a mistake and I was trying to be cool and I drove outside the cap. So that was stupid me. You know, it's one mistake that I made. I won't do it again. So the point that I'm making is it's difficult to snipe onto that cap. So it's actually a safe place to drive into if there's no enemy tanks there. And that's what I could have done, but there was no need for me to do it at that time. So you can see that we have this sniping position over here where this friendly tank is next to me. And the enemy tanks have their own side, and we have our side. And I like to put pressure on the enemy. I like to go over to the enemy side, see what they're doing, see what their hit points are, see if I can knock them out of the game. You'll notice over here there's a little bit of a hill, and that little tiny hill is big enough that I can hide behind it. Sneaky, sneaky, sneaky.
You have been promoted.
So I got my promotion up to Sergeant. I got 1,700 damage, 368 assistance damage. plus the artillery is now available, so I can do an artillery strike if I want to.
Smoke screen is ready to use.
Sloppy gameplay. Wow. So I've had games where we pressed the enemy. We were on the enemy's red line at their spawn point, and I've had games where we sat there and we waited for the enemy to come, and the enemy never came. And I had games like this where I was there by myself. I didn't have a lot of support, and it didn't work out for me. But there was a game where my entire a lot of tanks were with me, just sitting there on that red line waiting for the enemy. And when that happens, I usually make the mistake of hoping for an easy game, when instead what you should do is find another spawn to play on. Because you don't want to be sitting there doing nothing. It's like they say, the DPM goes down when you're not firing your gun. So I'm notifying my allies that we have an excess of players at Zone A. Obviously, it's not a large excess. But if I told them that we had an excess, it was probably more than 2 when I checked. And it does change rapidly. Oh, you know what? This is not A. This is E. So I left A, and in E we have an excess also. So that means that they must have a surplus. We must have a deficit at the C cap. Okay, so now here we have another example where the enemy is trying to cap, and we need a strategy to reset that cap. Luckily for cap E, the defenders can get very close to the cap without being shot at, and you can just sit there and wait for the time to go in. Got to make sure you keep that gun pointing towards the right tank. Long reload. I don't mind suiciding, I don't mind getting killed if it means resetting the cap. Resetting the cap is far more important of a tactic. Hopefully, I am working on some strategies to reset the cap without dying. I have one strategy for cap A that does work, and obviously there's one for cap C. The strategy is obviously not to necessarily be on the cap, but get close to the cap, hit the enemy, and then duck behind one of the buildings. And if you watch all of my videos, you're going to see examples where I pull it off. It does take driving skill. It's going to be different for every tank because every tank has a different traverse speed. The turning circle is going to be different on every tank. This is a very dangerous tank to reset a cap because it's very difficult for the gun to actually do any damage. Doesn't aim very well, doesn't do a lot of damage, bounces a lot. Was very careful driving. It's a very difficult tank to drive. Over here we could just sit and park and reload, waiting to come around for another pass. These steel items, those round steel tubes, are good defense. It's always better to have it 2-on-1. Have one of your allies go with you when you raid the cap. It confuses the enemy. You're going to want one tank with a good gun to go in to do all the sniping, and you want another one to take the attention from the enemy, such as a heavy tank. So now obviously I'm going to go back to the repair facility. I'm up to 3,500 damage and 600 spotting damage. When I played Frontline in the Sandbox server last year, I was one of the testers. I tried playing light tanks, but I thought the light tanks were too difficult, and I swore I just wouldn't play them. However, I learned the tactic and the style while playing in random battles. In random battles, I used to be a good scout and a spotter, but lately I've been sniping along with scouting and spotting, and because of that, that tactic is becoming useful in frontline mode because now I'm used to sniping. So you can see I'm notifying my allies that we have a surplus of tanks on Zone E.
Heavy artillery is ready.
Let's see if we can drop some artillery on someone. One of the great things about using these consumables is that you can drop the artillery anywhere you want. It doesn't have to be only in your zone. But I'm the type of person where I make decisions very quickly, and although sometimes it's not the perfect decision, it's usually best to make a quick decision. Make sure you're confident in your abilities to make a decision very quickly. Find a target as fast as possible. Drop that artillery as fast as possible. Keep on moving in the game.
Zone F under attack.
He's not a good tank to drop that airstrike on. You want to find someone who's moving a bit more slowly. There's a good one. Did cause 97 damage and 4 critical hits. Okay, so I decided to, well, I almost decided to switch over.
Under attack.
It looks like I saw some vulnerable enemy tanks over here. Just get behind that little hill so they can't shoot back at you. Trying to look for a way out. It's going to take a while to learn the maps, to learn where's a good place to hide. And the other thing I don't do is I don't necessarily run away, even if they chase me away. Because the best time to get another jump on them is immediately, if they think you're running away. They're so busy, he's got so many other tanks to worry about. It's very easy to run away and then just return and sneak up on them again. Our opportunities are hard to come by. Even though I had taken a little bit of damage, it was worth it to come back for the second run, especially because we were 3-on-1 on that enemy tank. So I do need to go in for repairs, and I see a repair facility in front of me, but it's a little bit in the enemy territory. Let's see if I can do some damage to this guy. He's too busy, he doesn't know what's going on.
Zone F has been lost. Attackers got extra time.
Unfortunately, my tank doesn't aim very well. It's very difficult to drive. Gotta get out of there. It's too slow to maneuver. You notice I'm turning to see where the enemy is because I noticed that if I took a sharp right turn behind these rocks, he wouldn't be able to hit me. And now I'm going back for that Object 252U even though I'm low on hit points. Hopefully I'll get it right this time. Yeah, it looks like I got killed. The tank is just, excuse me, the ELC is great for capping. If I were capping, I would absolutely take it out.
The main objective has been reached.
Maybe it's good for stealth spotting, but otherwise I'd say use it only when you're capping and don't use it any other time.
Ready for deployment.
So we're going to go out with the M41. I'm up to 4,800 damage, 900 spotting damage. And I'm up to the lieutenant is my level. Looks like they're capping Cap D. They have a lot of time left. We don't want them to have all this free time. We want to get them out of the game. It's a light tank, so I should be able to go in by myself. Hit him hard, maybe ram him if I can. Looks like I failed to ram. Got to get that gun around. And they just go back for repairs. If nobody kills me, you know, it costs me a little bit of silver. Other than that, it's no big deal. Always got my eye out for enemy targets, so I saw that guy there. I was able to take 2 shots.
Vehicle repaired.
Okay, so that was an example of a suicide run that worked out very well. I did not die, although I took some damage, and I was able to help reset the cap. Got enemy tanks all over the place. You notice I'm waiting for the camo nut to turn on, so they won't spot me. So that Scorpion hit me for 500 damage. That's the dangers of being spotted. I'm up to 6,300 damage, and I still have 900 spotting damage. Looks like they're trying to cap again. That Bat Chat, I believe he may have been on full health, and there's another tank there. I don't have time to go in for repairs. Cross your fingers. I got an artillery strike that's about to become available to me. Got a lot of tanks over there. See if I could drop some artillery. It showed the airstrike, but it's really an artillery strike that I dropped. It's showing the wrong icons. It's obviously a problem with the replays. Really should be getting on that cap. Doesn't matter if you're low health. They're about to win. And there's nobody there to reset. Way too late.
Enemy airstrike incoming.
Yeah. So they had a lot of tanks on the cap. There were 4 or 5 enemy tanks on the cap. Unfortunately, I had taken a lot of damage, so I couldn't really take any risky maneuvers. Staying alive has to be your priority in certain cases. That would, like I said, it would have been impossible for me to stop all those tanks from advancing onto that cap.
Ready for deployment.
Let's get this show on the road.
Now, when you do a suicide run, you know, you should expect, well, if there's 1 enemy tank on that cap, maybe you'll be able to kill it. If there's 2, it's really unlikely. I'm not saying that it's impossible, but the likelihood of success goes down dramatically. And obviously, if there's more, it drops even further. And the type of tank that you are is going to have a big impact. If you go in with a light tank to reset cap, you're going to have a lot of problems resetting a heavily armored tank. One of the things that I noticed about Frontline during the sandbox testing period was that during the first few days, nobody knew how to play the game. And it took a while for people to learn how to play the game and for people to learn strategies. And I'm seeing it on the live server now, where the first few days people really didn't know how to play. However, they're starting to learn the strategies, and the gameplay is starting to become a lot more competitive. So you can see that the enemy is advancing up a certain line, and the key is to keep them at at the range of your gun, so that you're less likely to be spotted and you can still snipe on them. Even though I left that position, the most logical thing is to return back to the position that I was at, because it's the most powerful position. And one thing you'll hear me talk about in a lot of my other videos, very important to hit the weaker side armor or the rear armor of enemy tanks. And it's going to be difficult for you to hit the rear armor during the front line, but hitting the side armor is actually quite easy. It's going to happen frequently in the game. So make it a part of your strategy, especially if you play light tanks, to go after the side armor of enemy tanks. I just got a promotion to Major. I made a big mistake because I was too high up in the ground, and I should have been in the lower level. The ground that I was driving on, I wasn't all the way up at the top, but I was high enough that they could shoot at me, and I could have gone to the lower level, and I could have swung by the flank without them shooting back at me. If you look at the mini-map, you're going to see that the enemy is approaching Objective 1. We've got a little bit of a defense, and I'm going to possibly take out a heavily armored tank. Looks like I'm looking at the Yag Tiger. Yep, the Yag Tiger. Right there to my right is a good sniping position that I use in many games when I'm up at the back. The Yag Tiger is a good tank when you have to have your back to the wall. It fires quickly, it's well armored, and it's got one of the highest frontal armors in the game, which means that you're going to bounce a lot of shells. People are somewhat afraid of it. You do want to use it in a position where you don't have to move around a lot, which is going to be good for Cap C. It's going to be good for defending here on the objectives. It's going to be good for Objective 3. And you can just sit here and just continue sniping away. I'm up to 8,900 damage with the light tanks. And we're going to finish off, round it up to 10,000 with the tank destroyer here. Okay, so it's okay that we lost Objective 1. I'll be sniping at these tanks as they head over to Objective 2. The good thing about this particular position is that I can monitor two different objectives with the same slow tank. You don't have a clear shot at every tank, but you're going to get lots of clear shots when they go through those gaps. And also the enemy tanks, they're concerned with hitting the objective, which means they're going to be less concerned with who's shooting at them. I am up to 9,700 damage, 1,200 spotting damage. Looks like I hit an invisible tank in front of me. Got good coverage with my allies on this flank. Just back up a little bit more.
Heavy artillery is ready.
Okay, let's drop some arty on somebody. There you go. Sweet dreams.
Objective 3 under attack.
It looks like the enemy's pinned down on these flanks. They're not moving anywhere. We've got a lot of tanks pinning them down, but they're not killing them off. If I were down on the bottom there, I'd be killing those tanks off one by one.
Airstrike is ready. Objective
Okay, so I'm going to drop an airstrike.
Objective 5 under attack.
Did 124 damage with the airstrike.
We have lost Objective 5. Save the last one.
Okay, so we've lost 2 objectives. Obviously, I'm not getting anything from back here. I'm going to have to move to a different position. It looks like we're doing okay. I think we might be able to defend on number 2. But they are making progress.
Our reinforcements have arrived.
I think we're going to be able to hold them off. Now, obviously, that shows you the importance of relocating. If the position that you're using doesn't do anything for you, you got to move to a new position. They are close. They could pull it off. That Progetto could pull it off well, other than the fact that he's dead. It looks like we're going to pull off this game as a win. I think what I'm going to do next time I play is, if they kill off Objective 1, I think I'm going to start slowly maneuvering to Objective 2. I think it's a better strategy. Okay, that's the game. Let's see if it says a victory. Okay, so that was 10,000 damage, 1,200 spotting damage. I received the position of Major in this game, and that's the game. And it was done mostly with light tanks.